Dear friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Nitesh Goyal from DAV College, Chandigarh. I am going to present before you the 10th module titled Research Design under the paper Tourism and Hospitality Research. The module will cover following topics: the introduction, the meaning of research design, the need for research design, the types of research design, features of a good research design, important concepts relating to research design, and finally, the summary. Dear friends, after the completion of this module, you will be able to understand the meaning of research design, identify the framework a researcher intends to use to find out the solutions to the research question, identify the needs and features of a good research design. First of all, friends, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the topic. Dear friends, after having understood the research problem in the earlier module and has clearly defined it, the next step in the process of research comes is the research design. It is actually the how of the study. Research design specifies the methods of achieving the defined research objectives in the best possible manner. The present module takes a deep insight into the overall framework that provides the direction for undertaking the research process. Let us now understand the meaning of research design. After we have clearly defined the research problem, the next task is to prepare a research design for the research, which is not an easy task. The designing task is actually known as the research design. Research design includes the questions like what, when, how, where concerning the research study. A research design is the blueprint or a roadmap for the research work, which is followed throughout the journey of conducting the research work. It acts as the backbone of whole of the research. A research design is the guiding element that helps the researcher to stay on the right path and does not let him deviate. It is the specified arrangement of state of affairs for data collection and its analysis in a manner so that objectives of the research are achieved economically, effectively, and scientifically. The research design actually comprises of an outline or a sketch of what the researcher is going to do from the very beginning till the end. That is, from the formulation of the hypothesis to the final data analysis. The research design in real sense helps in answering some of the whats, whys, wheres, whens and hows, like what is the study about? Why is the study being conducted? Where will the study be carried out? What type of data is required to be collected? From where the required data can be found? What is the time frame under which the study is being conducted? What will be the sample design? What techniques of data collection will be used? How will the data be analyzed? In what style will the report be prepared? So, keeping in view all the above whats and hows that can possibly be answered through developing a research design. One may divide the overall research design into different parts, like the sampling design. The sampling design will detail the methods adopted for drawing out the sample from the whole population. This will further include designing of sampling frame, sample size, etc. This part becomes important because majority of studies are actually undertaken on a sample drawn out of the population. If the appropriate method is not adopted, it leads the researcher to some biased results that may reflect position of a specific part of the whole population instead of the whole population. The second design can be of the data collection design. This includes how the data will be collected from the drawn sample. It comprises of the various techniques of data collection. There are a lot of techniques for data collection that broadly categorized as probability, non-probability. Both of these techniques have their own benefits and limitations, but the use of an appropriate method is of utmost importance, as one technique may not be suitable for every type of study. The third design can be of the statistical design. This comprises of the techniques used to analyze the collected data. It is concerned with the question of which of the variables are to be observed and which techniques will be applied to which data. Every statistical tool may not be suitable for every type of data. The fourth type of design can be the operational design. It deals with the methods by which the steps specified in the sampling, data collection, and statistical designs can be carried out. From the above stated description, some of the important aspects of the research design can be drawn as: the research design is a plan that details the different sources and different types of information relevant to the research problem. Research design is a kind of strategy that denotes the techniques to be used for collecting, summarizing, and analyzing the data. Research design also defines the total time frame under which the study is to be conducted. Research design also briefs the monetary budget under which the study is to be conducted. Now, after understanding the key features of a research design and the different aspects, it can be summarized that a research design comprises of a clear statement of the research problem, the population to be studied and drawing a sample out of it, the methods and the techniques to be used for collecting the data, methods to be used in processing and analyzing that collected data. Having a research design is always desirable because it helps in the smooth progress of all of the research activities, which in turn make the research more effective and fruitful with the minimum application of human efforts, time and money. Research design is very similar to a map as prepared by an expert architect for the better economical and attractive construction of a house, which makes the whole research well planned for data collection and data analysis for any research project. The purpose of a research design is to plan well in advance about the different methods that shall be proposed to be used for collecting the relevant data, and also the statistical techniques to be used for further analysis, keeping in line the main objectives of the study while ensuring the sufficiency of the staff, time and money. It is always desired that the research design should be error-free, as a single error may lead the whole research into some other direction. Thus, utmost care and due diligence is expected from the researcher while preparing the research design. A proper research design has also a bearing on the reliability of the results thus obtained, and thus further develops a solid foundation for the entire framework of the study. Although the research design holds so much of importance, still research design is many a times given a second priority by some researchers, which is fatal. The kind of attention a research problem deserves is sometimes not granted, making the study purposeless and away from the desired results, and even may produce some misleading results. A careless and casual approach of the researcher, neglecting the importance of research design, leads the whole research exercise in vain. It is thus becomes very pertinent that an effective and rightful design should be placed before initializing the research operations. If a research design is prepared meticulously, it will surely help the researcher to conduct the research in an organized manner and put his ideas on paper in a proper form and help the researcher to identify the possible shortcomings and limitations of the study so that the others may avoid those shortcomings. If the design is good, it may be replicated by other budding researchers in their study. A lot has been stated till now regarding the research design and its importance, but it is also important to mention here that a design should be appropriate and good at the same time, and having just any design is not enough. Preparing a research design without due diligence may actually prove to nothing more than waste of the efforts, time and money. But the question arises over here is that how to define the term good for any research design. A good design is generally explained as adjectives like not rigid, suitable, effective, cost effective, etc. Features of good research design can be explained as: firstly, it should be free from biasness. It can easily be said that a design is said to be good if it is free from any biasness. If the design is biased, the results will not give the true representation of the whole population and inclined towards a specific group of the population. Secondly, the reliability and validity. A good research design must be also good on validity and reliability. It should be such that it can be replicated and should give the results that it intends to. Third, minimum errors. Any design that leads to the minimum error can be called as the best design. Similarly, a design that results in obtaining the maximal outcome and provides for more facets of the same problem is considered to be the most appropriate and efficient design. Fourth, in line with the objectives. A good research design must be in line with the objectives of the study. In other words, the design should always lead toward achieving of the objectives of the study. Fifth, the flexibility. A research design has to be flexible and the researcher should enjoy the freedom of making required modifications from time to time. This especially is important in case the research is of exploratory nature, wherein the stress is on discovery of some new phenomena, ideas or insights so as to allow the reflection of the different aspects of new discovery. It is, however, important to mention here that even a good research design may prove to be bad. It is due to the reason that all the studies conducted are not same. Thus, they demand a different set of design. Therefore, a research design may be good enough for one study, but may not suit some other study. In a nutshell, it can be said that no single research design is best, which can be used and applied in any study of any type and time frame. Now, whether a research design good for one study is suitable for another study is good or not depends on the following factors. First, the type of study, that is, whether the study is exploratory, descriptive or causal. Second, the objectives of the study at hand. Third, the nature of the problem to be researched. Fourth, the sufficiency of time, money and other resources for the research work. Fifth, skilled and qualified researcher and his staff, if any. Although there are some guiding factors that can help a researcher to prepare a good research design, but practically it is one of the most difficult tasks. It is through the basis of primary function of research only that a research study can be categorized as an exploratory, descriptive or causal study, and hence the choice of a particular research design may be made in any of such studies. The objectives of the study play a vital role in deciding the research design, as the research design has to be based on the objectives. Also, providing for sufficient time, money, other resources and the research staff hold quite an importance while working on the job of detailing a research design, such as experimental design, survey design, sample design and the like. After understanding the meaning of research design along with its relevance in any of the research studies, it becomes important at this point to throw some light on the related concepts. This will help the learner to obtain a better insight into the overall composition of research design. These concepts are firstly the variables. It is a concept that can take on different quantitative values, that is variables. Similarly, the concepts like weight, height, income are all the examples of variable. Qualitative phenomena or the behavioral attributes can also be quantified. There are different types of variables as presented below. Continuous variables. These variables are the phenomena that can take on different values quantitatively, even in decimal points, is called the continuous variables. Age, income, expenditure, etc. can be expressed in decimals and thus are the examples of continuous variable. Second, discrete variables. There are variables that cannot be stated in decimals like continuous variables but are expressed in integer values and are thus non-continuous variables, or in statistical terminology called the discrete variables. Number of kids cannot be expressed in decimals and thus becomes the example of non-continuous variable. Third, the dependent variable. Dependent variables are those variables whose outcome is dependent upon some other variable. For instance, if we say that price of a commodity depends upon the demand of that very commodity, then the price of the commodity becomes the dependent variable. Fourth, the independent variables. Independent variables are those variables that are antecedent to the dependent variable are called as independent variables. For example, if it is stated that the price of a commodity depends upon the demand of that very commodity, then the demand of that commodity is termed as an independent variable. Further, if the price being dependent upon demand also depends upon the availability and tastes of the customers, then the price remains a dependent variable and all other factors becomes the independent variables. The second is extraneous variables. Extraneous variables are actually the independent variables only that are not directly related to the study but affect the concerned dependent variable chosen for the study. For instance, the researcher wants to test the hypothesis that there is a relationship between price and demand of a specific commodity. In this case, the demand may be the independent variable and the price is the dependent variable. But other factors that are not the part of the study like competition, economic conditions, etc. are also affecting the prices and thus become the extraneous variables. Since there is indeed an impact of some extraneous variables on the dependent variables, such an impact is termed as experimental error in statistical terminology. Thus, it is always advised that the study should be designed that the effect upon the dependent variable is because of the independent variables only and not due to some outside or extraneous variables. The next concept is control. As stated in the previous point, that the study may get affected by some independent variables that were not the part of the study may lead to some other direction. Thus, efforts are required to be made to minimize the influence or impact of such extraneous variables. This minimization of external influence on the variables of the study is technically termed as control. The next concept is confounded relationship. One may make any efforts or may put in best efforts to control and minimize the influence of extraneous variables, but one can make it completely impact-free. This unbreakable relationship between the extraneous variables and the dependent variables is termed as to be confounded by extraneous variables. The next concept is of research hypothesis. A research hypothesis is an assumption or a presumption for testing the relationship among the chosen variables. The research hypotheses are actually some extrapolative statements that try to establish a relation between independent variable and the dependent variable. This presumed relationship is then put on test to check if it holds true or not through some statistical means. The next concept, experimental and non-experimental hypothesis testing research. When the primary objective of the research is to test a research hypothesis, it is termed as hypothesis testing research. It is unlike the exploratory research, where discovering something new is the primary objective. The hypothesis testing research may be of experimental design or of the non-experimental design. Research where manipulation is done in the independent variable is termed as experimental hypothesis testing research. Whereas on the other hand, where no such manipulation with the independent variable is done is termed as non-experimental hypothesis testing research. The next concept is experimental and control groups. Under the experimental hypothesis testing research, when the variables are exposed to some general conditions, it is termed as a control group. But when the variables are exposed to some specific or special situation, it is then termed as an experimental group. The research study may include only experimental groups, only control groups, or mix of both. The next concept is the treatments. In the previous 2 points, variables have been explained whether to have them controlled under some situation or conditions or not. These conditions or situations under which experimental and control groups are put into are termed as treatments. In other words, the manipulations made to independent variables and putting them into different situations is referred as treatment. For instance, if a researcher wants to compare the effectiveness of 3 different medicines for a specific ailment, in that case the 3 medicines will be treated as 3 treatments. The next concept is of experiment. An experiment is the series of all the steps undertaken under research to examine the truth of a statistical hypothesis. For instance, an experiment may be conducted to check the effectiveness of a new medicine on certain ailment. Experiments can be of following 2 types. First, absolute experiment. As in the above example, the researcher tests the effectiveness of a medicine on the ailment of a patient is an absolute experiment. Second, the comparative experiment. Comparative experiment is that experiment wherein the researcher would, as per the above example, comparative experiment is that experiment wherein the researcher would, as per the previous example, would compare the effectiveness of 2 or more different medicines on the ailment of that patient. The next concept is experimental unit. Experimental units are those predefined areas where different treatments are used. Such experimental units must be defined with due diligence and utmost care. Friends, let us now sum up the whole lecture. The research design is the backbone of any research. It is actually the blueprint or the roadmap for the whole of the research study. Research design acts as a guiding map for the research and helps in keeping everything on the track and in the right direction. A research design helps a researcher to put up his ideas in an organized form and give due thought for any shortcomings and inadequacies. Having mentioned the importance of research design, it is pertinent to mention that it should be good enough to suit the needs of the study. Thus, utmost care should be taken while preparing the research design, and due efforts should be made to keep it error-free and away from any biasness. It should be kept flexible enough so that to allow required modifications from time to time. Thank you.